Now that we got the old cable out, now it's time to install the upgraded stuff. So this is the Steeda clutch cable, and this will be the install video. So first things first is I'm going to take a file and file off these 4 tabs here, which will allow this black piece to slide off, and we won't be using that. And then after that I'll put this and bolt this to the firewall with just 1 screw, and I'll have to use the old screw, which is a 7mm bolt head. Okay, so here's my file, and I will file these tabs and get back with you. So back at the car, there's the hole in the firewall, and this piece, the body of this will sit in that hole, and I only have 1 threaded hole next to the firewall. That's my mounting point. So I would just use this ear to mount this, and I have a set screw here. There's a spring and a ball underneath the spring in there, so I'll leave that facing up in case I have to do any. I guess that's like the locking set screw to keep this guy from turning, perhaps. But I'll leave that facing up just in case I have to do any adjustment on it. And then once you have that bolted into there, I'm gonna have to use I don't have to, but I'm gonna use my original bolt because the threads are still good. This is a self-tapping screw. You can see on the end there, kind of looks like a drill bit. So the new one is slightly upsized. I could use it, but this still threads in fine. It's not a sloppy fit, so I can just reuse the old one. I do have a backup one, new one, if I want it. They actually came with 2, because this piece has 2 ears, because certain Mustangs have more than just 1 mounting hole, which makes more sense to me. So after this is bolted into the firewall, then you can, as long as you ground down all 4 tabs enough, you can push the clutch cable into the firewall piece, and then the end of the cable, you may not be able to grab it, so what you can do is just grab the other end, just feed it through a little bit, then you see it comes right out. Then you can pull that cable through for the interior part. Okay, so working on cars, it's always something. So real quick, just show you, there's the ball, spring, and the set screw. I took those out because I am going to unthread this piece entirely and then bolt the housing in first, because when I take the old screw, new screw, does not matter, when I go to bolt it in, the head of the screw is so close to this threaded piece without the knurled outside that I actually cannot get the 7mm socket on it. And make sure you put the ball of the spring of the set screw back in, because once this is in the car, there's going to be basically no room to get the Allen key in there. So just do it now. It'll be a little bit harder to work this in with that stuff in place, but at least you won't have the hassle of having to realize you got to take everything apart, put that back in the threaded hole here. You can see there's a hole in the bottom there, and the ball pushes against the threads, and you have like what looks to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Yeah, 6 different, it's hard to show it from a top-down view. We have 6 different small, almost divots or slots, and the ball will sit down in those divots when it's at the bottom of the threaded hole, and the spring, the set screw will push down the spring, which keeps tension on the ball. So the ball, you'll hear a click each time the ball sits down these grooves here, and it's clicked into place. You can go like a 1/6 of a turn, and you can that's how you really get your fine tuning with your adjustment with the clutch cable. And then of course you also, at the end of the cable, you have the threaded portion with the jam nut. So you have 2 areas of adjustment there. Just something to know. Okay, so I got the firewall adjuster in this end of the cable. through the firewall adjuster, and that I reused the old screw like I said I would, right about there. So that all barely went in, so that's good to go. And then on the, I still need to get the bracket bolted into place, but I wanted to get the other end of the cable routed. So let's put the flash on. Maybe that'll be easier to see. So, taking it down here, I have the end of the cable through the clutch fork, through the hole in the transmission housing with the retainer clip pushed in, because the new Steeda clutch cable has a like a groove in the plastic housing. Once you slide it through the transmission hole on this side, the clip will go right back into that groove. And the cable is routed. Everything with the cable is routed properly, except one thing that I might leave alone is it comes underneath the O2 sensor wiring, just like the old one was, and it takes a turn right in front of the oil filter, which is also fine. But the ground strap, hang on, let's see if that'll focus. Yeah, ground strap here. I think the old cable may have been to the left of the ground strap, but it's actually, now that I'm looking at it, taking a second look, I don't even think it's that big of a deal, because this is the other end of the ground strap. But it's not like there's any tension on it, and even when the cable's tightened up, I don't think it's gonna pull that much in towards the ground strap or pinch anything. But of course I'll double check after all is said and done. So yeah, basically last thing under the car is to bolt the bracket in back into, I put the screw back in there so I wouldn't lose it. Right. Focus, man. There we go. Put the screw. So yeah, that's where the bracket goes. When you're taking the old bracket off and putting the new one in, keep in mind those two brake lines right there. You don't want to, because the bracket's almost like tucked behind the bottom one, so very slightly, that bottom brake line. And of course you don't want to damage those, so just keep that in mind. Just be very careful. All right, we'll do that, and then we'll go inside the car under the driver's area. Okay, so I'm happy with the routing of the cable under here. That little screw, I think the hole is stripped out, so I have to try to find a different screw. I mean, it'll hold it in, but I'm just worried about if the vibration of driving around, if that screw comes out and the cable just flopping around. So I have to figure out something with that. But the cable's fine, and the ground strap is right behind it, but it's not. The cable's not pinching the ground strap against the where that engine mount is. So and also right above the ground strap is the exhaust manifold, but there's a good 1.5 to 2 inches of clearance. So I'm not really worried about it melting, because I mean the ground strap has lived under here for 27 years, so it should be fine. Because I mean I can move it on the other side of the cable. It would be like out here. So that might be slightly better, but not too big of a deal. If I change my mind, I'll move it. But that is the routing and the cable. Make sure it goes right around the engine mount and not under. Let's see if I can show you here. Not under that lip, because you have the power steering lines and all that. You don't want it to get pinched against this metal piece here, or up against it, or go down and be rubbing up against the power steering lines. So just make sure you got clearance and nothing's getting pinched really when you run this clutch cable. Okay, now we're under inside the car, under the dash. and we're going to install the Quadrant, and you have the Steeda logo facing to the right towards the gas pedal, and very importantly, up under here, let me put the light over there real quick. So the Quadrant, my Quadrant, or in your kit, if you get the same kit as well, should come with a plastic washer and an aluminum spacer. So on the smaller shaft closer to you, you are going to put the aluminum spacer on first. We'll see how good of a fit it is. And it's a little bit of a sloppy fit, maybe 10 to 15 thousandths bigger than the diameter of the shaft, which is interesting because I worked a machine shop, so I could actually make one that is a better fit. But you know, the kit seems to be high quality, so we're just gonna roll with it. Next, like I said, logo facing to the gas pedal. You will put the one end on the back shaft, and then make sure to take the cable that's sticking through from the firewall adjuster that you fed through, and just put it to the right of the Quadrant. That way you don't have to fight it later, because the Quadrant's going to stick up pretty high, like up there in the up against the insulation up top. So just have the cable to the right so it's out of the way, and then you will simply rotate the Quadrant up. Actually, hang on, get stuck on something. Oh, I'm a little pinch. Yeah, so you just start to do this one-handed. Let's see how you get it started on both shafts. Slide it on like so. And then you can take your plastic washer, and again, on the shaft closer to you, you will slide that on. And then you can go ahead and put your cotter pin in on both your cotter pins in on both shafts. And because we have a firewall adjuster, not the stock one, the cable will go into the I believe that V section of the Quadrant. If you had the stock firewall piece, then I think it would go in the front here, but let me double check. Okay, so never ceases to amaze me. Everything's always in a tight space. So I had to take the Quadrant off and start the cable on that part of the cable closer to the firewall. Let's see if I can get that. It's okay right there, if you can see that there. So if you have a firewall adjuster like I do, that blue piece, or yours might be silver, or just aluminum, non-painted aluminum, I mean, you'll start the cable there. If you have a stock firewall piece, you will start your cable in the front section there. And I had to slide the Quadrant off of these two shafts, and then start the cable, then put the Quadrant back on the two shafts. And side note, I'm 175-ish pounds. If I was like 10 more pounds or slightly bigger dude, I would be taking the driver's seat out, because I barely fit in this position I'm in, and it already hurts. So keep that in mind. Okay, so I got both cotter pins in. But one thing that seems kind of odd to me is that they give you a spacer here and a washer here. So like this part of the Quadrant is not pinched on both sides, but it's got like basically washers on both sides, so it keeps it basically in place. But this side, they just have you put the cotter pin back in, but there's like a whole ½ inch of space between this piece of the this face of the Quadrant and the cotter pin. So therefore, let's see if I can show this. I don't know if you can see that. It's the whole thing just would flop around, I would think.
Yeah, that's a better view of it. So like, I guess that's fine. I mean, I haven't seen any reviews where people complain about that. Just something I would think about. I mean, like I said, I have access to machine shops. I'll probably make a little spacer on the lathe and maybe even a washer this size, just so everything's more buttoned up, not flop around like that. Okay, so back under the car at the bell housing. I already had the cable through initially when I ran the cable down here, like I said. And so you see that the clutch fork is loose right now. And then inside there you can see the throw bearing moving on the shaft. I am, as a side issue, I'm kind of worried about the side-to-side play it has, but more on that. I'll have to look into that later. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, so you see how it's sloppy and loose right here, I'm just going to push the clutch fork in just where the, just hold tension on it just a little bit where the throw bearing pushes up against the, I guess the teeth in the clutch blade in there. And while I'm holding tension on it, I'm just going to thread on the bigger nut and then leave the jam nut off for now. And just get the nut tight against the clutch fork, so that way when we're off the clutch, like when we have the pedal, when we don't have it pushed down, the clutch is engaged and there's not any play. It's not rattling around because we're just a little bit snug here. And then of course when we press the clutch in, we want the clutch pedal to cause the, pull the cable in and cause the clutch fork to push the clutch in so that you're in between gears and that you're getting a good pull. It's hard to pull it by hand, but so that you're getting a good pull of the clutch fork all the way in. So that you're releasing the clutch all the way when you push that pedal down. So yeah, basically just finger tight is what I'm going to try. Of course, I'll have to make some adjustments later, I'm sure, but that's what we're going to go with. And then just as one final reminder to make sure that you come back to the firewall adjuster, and this is how you can make your adjustments, I guess, with the where it releases. So you can, lefty loosey this out as much as you need to. I have it almost all the way in. I loosened up a little bit because that bottom bolt head there was kind of interfering very slightly with the knurled part of the adjuster. So I threaded out just a little bit, but make sure wherever you do thread it in or out to that you hear a click. Because you want that ball and that spring. You want the ball that's underneath the spring and the set screw in there to be pushing in one of the 6 divots that are in the threads of the adjuster. And then of course you'll start it up and test the clutch out, push it in and out while it's running, make sure everything feels good, and of course take it for a road test. I think that's it for this install. You can watch, I just watched CJ Pony Parts install because they're a little bit more in depth than LMR's. Something to keep in mind, and see you in the next video. And P.S. It is an absolute pain in the butt, but if you're under the car by yourself and you're trying to tighten up this jam nut, you can put the pry bar in and then, like, with part of your arm, pry down the handle so that you can still have your hand free to hold an adjustable wrench or a 1/2-inch wrench on the bigger nut, and then take your other hand and take another 1/2-inch wrench, and as you pry out, you'll have enough slack in the cable to kick it out to the side away from the fork. Get the wrench on it, tighten it up.